I got it. Um, Go. We must untie bundles of straw before an animal, and we may scatter tender cedar boughs, but we are not triply bound. But not triply bound bundles of straw. We may not shred neither fodder nor carobs before an animal, whether it is lightweight or heavyweight. Rabbi Yehuda permits crushing carobs for a lightweight animal. We may neither stuff a camel nor cram it, nor but we may put food in its mouth. We may not fatten calves, but we may put in their mouth food in their mouths, and we may put food into the mouths of fowls, and we may put water into a bran, but we may not need it. We may not place water before bees or before doves that are in a dovecote, but we may place water before geese and chickens and before Herodian doves. We may cut up gourds before cattle or a carcass before dogs. Rabbi Yehuda says if it was not yet a carcass prior to the Shabbos, it is prohibited since it is not something that was prepared. Okay.
Right. Mefirin and Nedarim b'Shabbos. So if a person has a need to revoke a neder on Shabbos, then that's fine. He can revoke that neder. In fact, um, I was on a base din that revoked the neder on Rosh Hashanah. Um, what, wait, no, was it on Rosh Hashanah? I think it was for somebody whose practice was that he would never eat before davening
Right.
he's just finding that as he got older he wasn't able to last the whole way through the long davening. It was Rosh Hashanah. Yeah, it was Rosh Hashanah. He didn't want to eat at the Kiddush in the middle of the day.
Right.
So Rav Haber called together the closest two people and said that, although technically I guess Rav Haber could have done it himself because he's a chacham, but he none of, so didn't want to do it. Anyway, so you can do hafaras nedarim on Shabbos, but nish'alin ledvarim she'hein letzorech haShabbos, but it has to be for something that is a need on that Shabbos. So in my case, it was a guy who wanted to eat on Rosh Hashanah. He wanted to eat Kiddush, and he needed it that day. But you can't just say, oh, because tomorrow, whatever. It's got to be something that has a
Right.
relevance on that day. Okay. Complete context shift. Pokekin es hamaor. You're allowed to stop up a window. Now we dealt with that a few Mishnayos ago when we were talking about closing the window. Does the shutter have to be attached and hanging and whatever to the wall? And the maskana was no. There's no. You can block it up with anything you want. Okay. Umodin es matlis for es mikveh, and you're allowed to measure a matlis, which is
Patch.
yeah,
Measure patch.
touch let's say touching a sheretz, and afterwards touched other pure things on Shabbos to see if they became tummy. Now, of course, the patch, if it's on a questionable size, you're not sure if it's makabel tumah or not.
Mhm.
So you need to measure it to make sure if it really did touch we know it touched the sheretz, but we want to check if it is of enough size to transmit tumah. Also, mikveh. If you're not sure if a mikveh is kosher, you need to measure it. You can measure it on Shabbos. Now, normally we don't allow measuring things on Shabbos because it's Gezerah Derabanan, because you might come to take notes of these things to make marks. Okay. Umase bimei aviv shel Rabbi Tzadok. So Rabbi Tzadok must have told over the story where his from his father. Ubimei Abishal bin Botnis, and I guess his Abishal bin Botnis was alive at the time as well. Shepakaku es hamaor betafiach bekasher es makeda begemi. Now, what the commentary explains what was the situation. There was a guy in a house who was dying, and the room he was in didn't have a regular window for the tumor to go out the window, and there was another hole leading into another room, and they were concerned that the guy was going to die and the tumor was going to travel through the house in order to get out. Um, so what did they do? They blocked up the the light the light hole with tafiach. How do we translate tafiach?
Yeah.
It's a small bucket. It was a small bucket made out of earthenware.
Right. Earthenware jug. Right.
Because earthenware doesn't accept tuma from the outside. So they push that into the hole, the kashu esa mekeda begemi, and so they um and they tied onto it something with another kind of earthenware vessel with a little bit of reed rope.
Right.
Okay. Let okay. And so they tied on that im yesh bagigis posach tefach im lav. And so that they could see if there was surrounding it a gap of a tefach or not. So they took this measurement in order to see if there was enough space for the tumor to get
Okay.
in when the guy would die. So from this maaseh, we learn we learned two things. So three things. Shepokikin, that you're allowed to block up the hole, umodedin, and you're allowed to measure the hole, bekoshin, and you even allowed to tie. Obviously, it was with a knot that wasn't permanent.
Right.
Um, okay, and they did all these things on Shabbos in this particular case to prevent the tumor from being transmitted. And Hadran Alach Maseches Shabbos.
Okay.
Okay, now let's
Um,
go to Eruvin.
all right. That wasn't sure how we're going back and forth. I wasn't sure I was going to do that. So,
Okay.
okay. All right, Ervin,
Starting,
I'll
starting,
follow.
starting with Eruvin. Okay, Mavoi. Shehu gavoa lemala me'esrim ama. Okay, so now Mavoi, first of all, let's just understand what we're talking about. And that Mavoi is an alleyway that's
Right.
that comes off the Rosh Hashanah. And you have a Mavoi is to the Chatzer as the Chatzer is to the house. So what you would have is you would have a street with a whole bunch
Right.
of properties around the street. And inside the properties are subdivided with a chatzer and houses surrounding the chatzer.
Right. Okay.
So then the mavoi is the big one, and the chatzer is the little one that's right next to the houses. So the mavoi next to the street, that you can technically we refer to it colloquially as an eruv, but actually it's a shituf. It's a joining of the shituf mavos, and that's what we have around the city. We call it the eruv, but
Right.
it's the shituf. But
Okay.
that's just what people say. Okay. So now the mavoi, if it is the mavoi has to be separated from the Rosh Hashanah in order to get an air of in order to be able to carry in it. How do you separate from it? You have to make some sort of visual cue to show that you're moving from the Rosh Hashanah into the mavoi. And it's got to be a closed mavoi. It's got to be closed on three sides. Only one side's allowed to go. It can't be like a thoroughfare between two Rosh Hashanah because then it also becomes Rosh Hashanah. So the closed mavoi um, has to be separated from the Rosh Hashanah using either a beam across the top, which is what we call the that's wait, come on, what's the term for that? That's the Cora. That's called the Cora, the beam. Okay.
Okay.
And also there's a piece called the lechi, which is like a jaw, but a cheek, right? So that
Right. Right.
so that's the part that goes upright. So the upright part attaching to the wall that shows that oh you're moving out of the Rosh Hashanah into something separate. Now there's a machlokas about how many of these pieces you need and where they need to be, and that's what we're going to be looking at in these Mishnayos. Okay, so now the mavoi who gavoa lemala me'esrim ama, if the mavoi has a beam when you're going into it that's higher than 20 amas, yima'et says the Tanna Kama. Tanna Kama says if you have it so much like the sukkah. Remember when a sukkah cannot be more than 20 amas high because then you can't distinguish that there's actually schach over there. It's too high. Your eyes don't naturally go there. Um, Okay, and the same thing goes for the mavoi. It needs 20 amas. It need the korah needs to be 20 amas or below. Rabbi Yehuda Omer eno tzarich, he says, no, that's not necessary. Korah can be any height and it's still good. Baracha me eser amos, and if the entrance to the mavoi is more than 10 amas, okay, so that's like about 5 meters. You have to narrow it. So you have to put some boards in place in order to narrow the entrance so that it's less than 10 amos. However, if it has a doorway shape And that, by the way, you see all around in the Eruv, right? The Eruv has got all these poles and a wire across the top in order to make it Tzuras Pesach. And that's what we're relying on when we build an Eruv. Okay. Um, it's got to be so if it looks like a doorway, אם יש לו תרס הפסח, אף על פי שהוא רחב מ-10 amos, אין צריך למעט. Then it can be wider than 10 amos and we're fine. Okay. Hechsher mavoi. All right. What is the preparation to make a mavoi okay? If we're not talking about a tzuras pesach, obviously everyone agrees that a tzuras pesach is fine because you got two lechis and a korah. But what if you're just doing it the way without the tzuras pesach? Beis Shammai omrim lechi v'korah. You need both. Says Beis Shammai, both an upright and a crossbeam. Or Beis Hillel omrim lechi or korah. Either one is sufficient, says Beis Hillel. Rabbi Eliezer omer lechayayin. Actually, Rabbi Eliezer is an interesting case because he is a Beis Shammainik in general. But he says that you don't need both a lechi and a korah. He's more makil than Beis Shammai, but he's more machir than Beis Hillel because he's saying that you need two lechis, one on each side, but you don't necessarily need a korah. Mishum Rabbi Shmuel omer Talmid echad lifnei Rabbi Akiva. Okay, so there was one Talmud who quoted in the name of Rabbi Shmuel. Lo nichlaku Beis Shammai or Beis Hillel al mavoi shehu pachos me'arba amos. It says everyone agreed when the mavoi was less than is less than 4 amos wide. Shehu or belechi or bekora. Then either one is sufficient. So even Beis Shammai agrees that when it's only 4 amos wide, you don't have to have both of them there. Alma nechleku. So what's the machlokes? Arachav me arba amos va'ad eser. When you've got up to 10, between 4 and 10 amos wide, so Beis Shammai omrim lechi v'korah, Beis Hillel omrim or lechi or korah. Okay, so that narrows down the discussion. Amar Rabbi Akiva, who heard this Eidos says, no, al zeh v'al zeh nechleku. He says that you're wrong. The Beis Shammai holds that you need a lechi and a korah even with less than 4 amos wide. Okay, and we're not going to say what the halacha is like because the halacha is not like Beis Shammai anyway. It's just a question of what was their opinion. But according to Rabbi Akiva, their opinion didn't change even if the mavoi is less than 4 amos.
Okay.
Okay, let's go back to Shabbos.
Okay. I think we should be on the what I do. Yud Tes Vav.
Yep.
Okay. These are the shreds that invalidate the circumcision. Flesh that covers a larger pan of a corona, and he may not eat of truma. If he was fleshy, he must rectify it for appearance sake. If he circumcised but did not expose the circumcision, it is as if he did not circumcise. Reb Elliot says we may suspend the strainer on Yom Tov and we may pour into a suspended Yom one on Shabbos, but the comments say we may not suspend the strainer on Yom Tov, nor may we pour into a suspended one on Shabbos, but we may pour into a suspended one on Yom Tov. We may pour water over wine dregs so that they become clear, and we may filter wine through cloths or through a basket made of palm twigs, and we may put an egg into a mustard strainer. We may make a honeyed wine on the Shabbos, and Rabbi Yehuda says on the Sabbath it may be made in a cup. On Yom Tov it may be made in a bottle, and on Kol Moed in a cask. The Reb Tzadok says everything depends on the number of the guests.
Right. Okay, Daled Aleph.
Aleph Daled, right?
Yeah,
Just
Daled Aleph
okay.
actually, but okay.
Wide enough to hold an arak, and I'm strong enough to hold an arak. Rabbi Yehuda says wide, even if it is not strong.
Wait. Where are you? That's
Shabbos.
you're in the
No,
middle of the sentence.
I went back to Eruvin. I'm sorry. I went back.
Okay.
As I put them on the side here, I just grabbed it. Okay.
Shabbos Daled Aleph.
Okay, here we go. Okay. With what may we insulate hot food and what may we not insulate them? We may not insulate them with neither with mark, nor with manure, nor with salt, nor with lime, nor with sand, with either wet or dry, nor with straw, nor with grape skins, nor with flocking, nor with grasses when they are moist, but we may insulate hot food with them when they are dry. We may insulate hot food with clothing, with produce, with pigeon feathers and carpenter sawdust, or with fine flat combings. Rabbi Yehuda prohibits fine combings but permits coarse combings. We may insulate hot food with pelts, and we may move them, with wool shearing, but we may not move them. I'm sorry, it's wrong. We may insulate hot food with pelts, and we may move them with wool shearings, but we may not move them. What should one do? He should remove the lid and they fall. If Elazar ben Azariah says he tilts the box on its side and removes the food, lest he removes the pot and be unable to replace it. But the comments say he may remove it and replace it. If he did not cover it when it was yet dry, he may not cover it after dark. If he covered it and became uncovered, he may cover it. One may fill a bottle, place it under a cushion or under a bolster. Or with what may an animal go out, with what may he not go out? A camel may go out with a curb, a dromedary with a nose ring, a Libyan ass with a bit, a horse with a neck chain, and all that wear a neck chain may go out with a neck chain, and it may be pulled with a neck chain, and we may sprinkle upon it them, and we sprinkle upon them and immerse them in their place.
Right.
Okay, all right, in the right order here. We have too much. Okay. The quantity of uncovered water sufficient for the venom to be offset. Rabbi Yossi says in vessels any quantity and on the ground 40 saw. Figs, grapes, figs, grapes, and cucumbers, gourds, melons, and muskmelons have been gnawed, even if there was as much as a kikar, whether large or small, whether detached or detached, it may contain moisture that are forbidden. Bitten by a snake is forbidden because of the dangers of life. If a doubt of uncleanness arose concerning a jar of truma, Reb Eliezer says if it was lying in an exposed place, he should put it in a hidden place. If it was uncovered, he should
Wait,
cover it.
wait, wait, wait. You jumped.
Right.
You jumped. Yeah. You missed the Mishnah Zayin.
You're right. I'm sorry. A wine strainer is forbidden because it's uncovered, but Reb Nachman commits it.
Okay, and that's it. That's
Okay.
three. Yeah.
I didn't look at the top of the page.
Oh.
Let's see. Big false. Okay. Base Gimel. There are cases of doubt pertaining to drawn water that the sages declared tahor. There is a doubt whether it fell into the mikvah or it did not fall, or alternatively, even if he definitely did fall, there is a doubt whether there was 40 sore in the mikvah or whether there was not, or alternatively, there were two mikvahs, one containing 40 sore and the other not, and it fell into one of them, but he does not into which one it fell. These doubtful cases are adjudged tahor because they have something on which to depend. But if they each contain less than 40 saw and it fell into one of them and he does not which one it fell, into which one it fell, this doubtful case is a judge tame because there was nothing to depend on. If Eliezer says one revi of drawn water qualifies a mikvah at the beginning, but 3 lugim when they're on the surface of the water. But the comments say both at the beginning, at the end, and the amount is 3 lugim. If a mikvah has 3 hollows, each containing 1 log of drawn water, when it is known that 40 saw of olive water has already fallen into the mikvah before they reach the 3rd hollow, it is valid. Otherwise, it is invalid. But Reb Shimon declares it valid because it is like one mikvah next to another mikvah.
Yeah.
Kulin. Okay, Aleph Gimel. If one slaughters within the top ring and leaves over a hairbreadth along the entire circumference, his slaughtering is valid. But Yossi Bar Yehuda says a hairbreadth along the greater part of its circumference. If one slaughters from the sides, the slaughtering is valid, and if one performs malika from the sides, malika is invalid. If one slaughters from the nape, the slaughtering is invalid, and if one performs malika from the nape, his malika is valid. If one slaughters from the throat, his slaughtering is valid. If one performs malika from the throat, its malika is invalid, because the entire nape is valid for malika, and the entire throat is valid for slaughtering. Thus, what is valid for slaughtering is invalid for malika, valid, and what is valid for malika is valid for slaughtering.
Invalid.
Invalid. What is sought for turtle doves is unfit for young pigeons. What is fit for young pigeons is unfit for turtle doves. In the beginning of the yellow wing and both is unfit.
Okay.
What is
That's
valid
it.
for
Yeah,
the
that's 3. Yeah.
Nazir? Okay, hey. If there were people walking on the road and someone was coming toward them, and one of them said, I am a Nazir, and that this is so and so, and another said, I am a Nazir, that this is not so and so. I am a Nazir, that one of you is a Nazir, and that one of you is not a Nazir. Then that you two are Nazirim, and all of you are Nazirim. Beis Shammai says they are all Nazirim, but Beis Hillel says no one is a Nazir except for the words whose words were not fulfilled. Reb Tarfon says not one of them is a Nazir. If he turned back suddenly, he is not a Nazir. Rabbi Shimon says he should say, if it was as I said, I am a Nazir by previous obligation. If not, I am a Nazir voluntarily. If he saw a Chai and said, I'm a Nazir that this is a wild animal, I'm a Nazir that this is not a wild animal, I'm a Nazir that this is a domestic animal, I'm a Nazir that this is not a domestic animal, I'm a Nazir that this is both a wild animal and a domesticated animal. I am not a Nazir that this is neither a wild animal nor domestic. I am a Nazir that one of you is a Nazir. I am a Nazir that one of you is not a Nazir. I am a Nazir that all of you are Nazirim and all of them are Nazirim. Okay.
Interesting thing that the difference between that and the person who turns around, um,
Right.
because there's a clear fact that you're not sure what the clear fact is, but
Uh-huh.
because the koi has got aspects of both the
Both
chaya
parts.
and the behemoth, then every one of these conditions that you say to make yourself a nazir on actually is true in some way. So that's I guess why the conditioning on the koi is different from the conditioning of hey, that's Fred. Okay.
All right. Have a great day and easy fast.
Good day. Amen, amen. Cool.